We have the Canon R6 versus the R6 Mark II when it comes to IBIS. Is there a difference? Hi, I'm Jared Hoyman with VisibleTour.com and welcome to the next test with the Canon R6 versus the R6 Mark II. Here we are going to be doing the big debate of the in-body image stabilization. This is going to be what it looks like for the R6 versus the R6 Mark II. In this test, we are going to be looking at 15 millimeters compared to 15 millimeters. And the lens we're going to be using is the 15 to 35 2.8. And then we're going to move on to the 24 millimeter. And this is all going to be handheld without a gimbal. After we're done with that part of the test, then we are going to go on to the Zoom Crane 2S and do that comparison as well and what looks best. In this test, I want you to pay attention at the 15 millimeter. You are going to notice a lot of wobble. Now, when I was doing this test, I didn't see it because I'm looking at a small LCD screen, but you're going to notice the wobble in the corners and kind of that warping. When we start to get to 24 millimeters, that is where it looks a lot cleaner, even with the R6. The R6 Mark II looks good, the R6 looks good. And then when we go to 15 millimeters on the gimbal, it cleans up really, really nice. And then the 24 millimeter, it's super clean and beautiful. But before we go into it, please subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going to be doing a lot more tests with the R6 versus the R6 Mark II. We did have the photo test, and you can go to that video and check that out. But we're going to be getting into more image and video grading, comparing these in C-Log. It's going to be exciting. So the first test we're going to be doing is the vlog handheld test. I am on the R6 Mark I with the 15 to 35 millimeter, 15 millimeters all the way out here. And I have autofocus on and image stabilization on as well on this one. And so just kind of walking around, look for the wobbliness on the 15 millimeter end here. If you see that kind of wobbling a little bit, I'm going to try not to focus on the screen. And the settings that I'm going to have for this are 1/50th shutter speed, because I'm doing 24 frames per second. And then I am at 5.6. I am doing it in C-Log 3. And ISO is at the base ISO for C-Log, which is 800. You can go below, and in some of the other tests I might go below. You don't get the same dynamic range, but it is still pretty good. And Canon and Sony allows you to go below that ISO range, which is nice if you have to. And then you still have that log to grade and have more coverage in the 10-bit file. Walk down the street a little bit and look like a weirdo in front of my neighbors. So if you're gonna vlog and you're walking around on the R6 Mark I, this is what it's like. Now you only get, it says 25 or 29 minutes, 30 minutes limit on here. And I have had it over in the sense that I had to restart it at 30 minutes, and then I've had another probably 10, 15 minutes sometimes. The 60 frames per second, it says 25. I usually cap out around 15. So when I'm using it. So we'll be doing that test as well. So this is what that looks like. And then if I were to kind of walk forward with this, this is what the IBIS on here is like with a 15 to 35. And I'll just walk around the corner. I'm using two hands. Can't be super steady. We'll also do this with a test on the gimbal as well. So the Zoom Crane. Quickly, let's just go to 24 millimeters. So we are at 24 millimeters, and here's walking as well. So I'm walking down. Is there wobbly in the corners? And I will walk down the driveway, facing forward. All right, let's move on over to the R6 Mark II in the same test. Okay, we are on the R6 Mark II, same exact settings as the R6, which is the 5.6 f-stop, 1/50th shutter. Can't even talk, my mouth is cold out here. And ISO is 800. And again, I probably didn't mention this when I was doing the R6, but the white balance is on cloudy because it's a cloudy day. So everything else, C-Log, and you can see how this is graded compared to the R6. We'll do that little comparison too. I find it a lot easier to grade on here than the R6. I'm not sure exactly why. but there is a difference to me. So this is what vlogging looks like, handheld in front. And I will try to put these side by side as well. Again, one-handed. And it's not a light setup. The 15 to 35 millimeter 2.8 is pretty heavy. But this gives you kind of an idea of what that's like. And now we'll walk forward. So I'm trying to go a little bit more steady, but I am walking a normal walk. I'm not slowing down at all. This is probably my regular speed walking down the street. Handheld. I almost forgot to do the 24 millimeter test on the R6 Mark II. So this is the 24 millimeter. How is the wobble on that? Is there much of a wobble? Now, I did review and I had a chance just briefly to look at the footage that I just did, and yes, it is super wobbly at 15 millimeter, but what is 24 millimeter like? Now we'll just walk forward, kind of turning, and we will see what this is like. So this is handheld, using two hands, but walking normal down the sidewalk. Is there a wobble in the corners? Leave comments below if you do see any wobble. Leave comments below if you don't see any wobble. Let me know your thoughts on this. One of the differences I noticed, and you tell me if you noticed it as well, is that you don't have that weird panning catch-up like you do on the R6 Mark I, where you turn and then it kind of shifts really fast. I feel like this kind of has more of a fluid when you are turning, so the wobble may not be as bad. You let me know in the corners. I won't know until I get on the computer and I edit this thing. Okay, I'm gonna put this on the Zune Crane 2S. We're gonna start with the R6 Mark II, then afterwards we're gonna go to the R6 and do that comparison, because on a gimbal, well, that's the majority of what I do my business on. Okay, this is on the Zune Crane, and I am walking down right now. This is the R6 Mark II, and this is just a straight walk. The autofocus is on that big tree to the right. And now it's coming up in the corner. We'll see what happens after it gets out of frame. All right, now it's repositioning. And so then we're gonna kind of turn around and just see what that looks like. So if we're walking down the sidewalk here, I'm just walking normal speed, and then I'll turn and kind of a sideways walk as I turn here. And this is kind of a move I use a lot in the front of houses and when walking across to a house. So we'll go this way. So walking a little bit faster. And then pan really quick. Now, is it ideal to vlog with a Zune Crane? It is heavy. I would not recommend it. But this is what you would use professionally. And so this is at the 15 millimeter. Let's go to 24 millimeter and see what that's like. So at the 24 millimeter, it's a little bit more cinematic looking. It's not so distorted, yet it's still wide and nice. We'll pan here. And again, IBIS is on, autofocus is on. I'm not sure what it's autofocusing on. And there's that turn. We'll go this way. This is the 24 millimeter test. And turn. Now, typically you'd want to shoot in 60 frames per second when it comes to everything kind of slowing it down. For me, it's the 24 frames per second. So that's a 40% slowdown. It's amazing. Get really smooth shots that way. But right now, we're testing out the IBIS, and slowing down the footage won't show you that. We're gonna do the extreme, which is the 24 frames per second, so it's all real time. And yeah, let's get on the R6 Mark I now. Here we are with the R6 Mark I, walking down normal speed. And just a side note, the last test I might have had the white balance off a little bit and had it on sunny instead of cloudy because I forgot to reset it. So if you notice a little color difference, that might be it. I will try to match them since it's C-Log. And here's the panning. So on a gimbal, everything's really nice. So I'm assuming these are going to be very close. So again, 15 millimeter. Walking down. We'll pan to the left in just a second. Pan. Okay, so we are at 24 millimeter walking down. Normal walking speed. So it's kind of hard to be still. Pan to the left. Pan to the right. And we'll head back this way. And I'll pan to my left in just a second. When I'm doing video walkthroughs of properties, I'm going a lot slower. And I'm also shooting at 60 frames per second, so I can slow it down to 24, have it nice and smooth. But this will give you an idea of the difference when it comes to the IBIS quality of the R6 Mark II and the R6 Mark I. So I'm going to take a look at this footage and we'll meet back in my studio. So what were your thoughts? Did you notice a difference between the two cameras? If you did, leave a comment below. If you didn't, leave a comment below. So obviously you have to leave a comment below. For me, personally, there isn't a huge difference with the in-body image stabilization, except for one thing, and it's hard to tell in this video unless I do really extreme tests with it. And that is when I'm coming along with the gimbal and I'm doing a pan, but I'm going forward, then I'm coming over. With the R6, there's like a catch-up where it kind of like, whoa, shifts really fast. With the R6 Mark II, it has more of a natural move to it. I did notice that. That is probably the only big difference that I noticed between the two cameras. Again, the 24 millimeter makes a huge difference over the 15 millimeter. I'm not sure what another lens would look like on the R6 and the R6 Mark II, like the 14 millimeter Samyang. That might look a lot different, but it may be just as wobbly. I don't know. That would be an interesting test. I no longer have my Samyang 14 millimeter, but that would be a good one. The 12 millimeter Laowa would be a good one as well. So if anybody out there that has access to those that live in the Green Bay area, or if Laowa or Samyang want to send those to me, I would love to do those tests on these cameras as well. So the big breakdown for me is 15 millimeter handheld. You are going to get a lot of wobble. Could be fun, but better have it on a tripod. 24 millimeter moving around, it's not going to be that wobbly. But where this thing shines and where pretty much every camera shines is going to be on a gimbal. And I like the Zhiyun Crane 2S. I've been using it for a few years now. I started with the Crane 1 and then moved my way up. And this one has worked very well for me professionally. So if you're interested in the Zhiyun Crane or the Canon R6 or the R6 Mark II or the 15 to 35 millimeter lens, I do have links below. It doesn't cost you any extra. We do get a small little commission if you use the links to purchase through Amazon. But that's about it. It helps support this channel. If you haven't already, again, please subscribe to this channel because more videos on the R6 versus the R6 Mark II are coming out. It was great doing this test and having you come along with me. So I look forward to the next one and I will see you in the next video.